Hey guys, it's Elena, and today I'm gonna do my February reading wrap up. I got through 10 books this month, which is way more than I thought I ever could. I just recently started getting back into reading in the fall, and so for just a few months into it, to be able to do 10 books in 1 month in February of all months, that was pretty crazy. 4 of them were actual physical books, the rest were audiobooks, and even just like 4 physical books is a pretty big deal for me. So anyway, let's hop in and talk about all the books that I read. So first of all, the first one that I finished was The Very Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna, and this one is like a cute, cozy, like fantasy romance, like a fantasy romance kind of. It's fantasy and it's romance, you know, and it's just really fun and really cute. So there's this woman who goes to tutor, she has magical powers, she's a witch, she goes to tutor these 3 young girl witches. She goes to live like at their house and everything, and she's teaching them how to control their powers better, and there's like this whole story going on. There's lots of people who live there with the girls, like people who take care of the gardening and people who take care of the girls who like cook, and people who are there's a guy who's a librarian who like takes care of all these really old books that are also there at the property. But anyway, so she ends up falling in love with one of the guys who works there. There is a little bit of like, I don't know if you'd call it like spicy, but there's like a sexy scene toward the end in case that's something that you want to know, but it's not like a spicy book by any means. It's a cute, wholesome, cozy read. I loved it. It was super duper fun. There were no dull moments. I never felt like I wanted to give up on it. I never felt like I was bored. It was great throughout. Each of the characters had such great little personalities, and you really like loved each of the little characters in there. And overall, it was just a really great read. Definitely 5-star read. I would totally recommend if anybody's looking for like a cozy fantasy romance kind of sweet cute little book. I would totally recommend it. So the next book that I finished was this one was an audiobook. It's Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree, and this is like a cozy fantasy. So there's this orc named Viv, and she was like, you know, like a mercenary, like she went out and battled and she did a lot of violence and stuff, but now she's ready to like settle down into a more like less violent, just normal kind of life, and she wants to open up a coffee shop, and she's gonna put it in this town where like nobody even knows what coffee is, but there is a little bit of a romance in there. She does have a little love interest in the story, no spice at all. So it's like the story of her like gathering up different people to like work with her, help her build up the place, but there is someone from her past who comes and makes a little bit of trouble for her. But overall, it's just a cozy fantasy. Like, that's just like the best way to describe it. It's a cozy fantasy, and I thought it was nice. I gave it a 5-star rating, but looking back, I think it's probably more like a 4.5. Maybe it wasn't like super perfect, but it was a really sweet, cozy, wholesome little read. And I love the audiobook because the author is actually the guy who does the voice, and he apparently is like a voice actor anyway, and so he did a great job. Each of the characters has like a really unique voice, and he just does a really great job on it. So I thought it was super great. The story itself was good, and the audiobook was really good because of the way the author read it all. The next book is Bookshops and Bonedust, also by Travis Baldree. It's like a kind of like a prequel to the Legends and Lattes that I read also in the same month. So this one is actually the physical one, and I feel like that kind of is why I only gave it a let's see, did I give it a 4-star? I gave it 4 stars. I felt like reading the other one as an audiobook really helped, because I really loved the way that the author did the voices of everybody, and reading it to myself wasn't as great in this other book. So this one here is still about Viv the orc. So she gets injured in a battle, and she has to like recover in this town called Merk, and she meets a bookshop owner who like kind of recommends books to her, and she starts to get into reading and kind of, you know, accepts that she is going to be like sedentary for a while. She's not battling anybody right now. She has to rest and she has to get better while she's in this town, and so she's reading these books to help her pass the time, right? However, you know, just because she's sitting and reading these books doesn't mean that there's no like adventure or anything going on. So there's like a little love story, a little like fling kind of thing going on, and there's also kind of a like a situation that she needs to figure out who is behind it. So there is like actual story. It's not just her like reading books all the time, but I just kind of felt like it wasn't as good as the Legends and Lattes book. It just, for some reason, I don't know if it's just because I was reading it physically instead of listening to the author do all the voices and everything on the audiobook, but it just wasn't as good as the Legends and Lattes one overall. I also felt like the flow was kind of off. So you've got like the warm and cozy bookshop vibe over here, but then you also have like big adventure stuff going on too. And I feel like the connection between the two could have flowed better. I feel like they were kind of, didn't fit together as nicely as you would want them to. That's kind of what I found to be the issue that I wasn't super into in this book, but the ending was sweet. And it does kind of maybe hint at another book in the future, maybe. I mean, maybe, we'll see. But yeah, so overall it's a 4 out of 5 for me. Okay, good, you know, good cozy little read for when it's a cloudy day and you're just chilling inside and whatnot. A good, you know, like winter kind of read or whatever. But just, I didn't feel like it was as good as the other one. I wonder if I listened to this one, if it would have been better. Okay, next book, another audiobook, The Burning God by RF Kuang. This is the 3rd book in the Poppy War series. I read the first Poppy War book and loved it. I read the second Poppy War book and I thought it was too much war, and I really had high expectations for The Burning God for this 3rd one. I thought it was gonna be more about like not so much focused on the violence. I thought it was going to be more of the political situation going on behind the scenes. Just the way that it ended in the 2nd book, I just thought it was going to be a little bit different in the 3rd book, but it ended up being a lot more still just going through war stuff, lots of violence and stuff like that, and it wasn't as awesome as I really wanted it to be. So I did give it 4 out of 5 stars. I mean, it is well written. I like that you have like morally gray characters. I like that like you feel like the love between some of the characters, you know. It's not a romance or anything, but the ending made me feel like, honestly, the ending made me feel like I had just wasted my life reading these 3 books, because the ending was like, what just happened? So, I mean, I'm not gonna give any spoilers or anything, but yeah, that's all I can say about it. All right, next book I finished was Song of the Forever Rains. This was a book that I went and found at the library, my local library. I was just browsing the shelves and I came across this book and I was like, oh, this looks cool, let's read the back. And I read the back and I was like, maybe not for me. So I went looking around the aisles some more and I came back and saw it again and I was like, okay, maybe we'll give it a try. So I brought it home and I'm so super glad that I did. Based on the back, doesn't really sound that exciting, but once I actually read it, I really enjoyed this. This was a 4.5 star read for me, only because the ending feels kind of rushed. So this story is about a young woman who has magic, and her magic has to do with her voice. And so she is going to be helping out her father by posing as the like to-be fiance of this duke who's like in a nearby city-state kind of situation. But apparently the duke is taking illegal drugs, and she has to figure out like where those drugs are coming from so they can kind of, you know, figure out how to deal with this problem. So she's posing as the duke's fiance, but she ends up falling in love with the duke's stepson. So it is a romantic fantasy. I feel like there was like a spicy scene, but it's not like super duper spicy or anything. I just really enjoyed this book. Like when I sat down at the library to read like the first, like that little like prologue or whatever, I was totally entranced. I read the prologue and I was like, OMG, I have to read this book. It's beautifully written. I really need to figure out what's going on in this story, and I'm super glad that I picked it up. I loved it up until like the last 25%. I feel like the ending was just too rushed. I feel like if we added an extra like 100 pages to take care of that ending, I would have given this a solid 5 stars. I just feel like even the romance felt a little rushed. Like all of a sudden they're like in love with each other, and I didn't really feel like it had built to that point yet, you know? And so, yeah, that's the only thing that really made me kind of like whatever about it. But yeah, it has a lot of 4-star reviews on, or 4 and 3-star reviews on Goodreads, and so I was like, I don't know if this is gonna be any good. But I actually really enjoyed it, except for the ending, kind of. You know, not that the ending was bad, but just that it felt really rushed. Okay, next was The Queen's Rising, which is by Rebecca Ross, who is somebody that I love. Every book I've read by her, just the handful of books that I've read by Rebecca Ross recently, I've totally loved. But The Queen's Rising was her debut novel, and you can totally tell that. So I gave this book a 3.5 stars. I don't know if I would super recommend it. There is a sequel, and I may read that at some point to see if it gets a little bit better, but overall, you just kind of feel like this one is like just a beginner, you know, like it could have used a little bit more story. Like it felt a little bit predictable at times and stuff like that. So we have Brianna, who is an orphan, and she's away studying at Magnolia House. At the end of her studies, she is placed with this mysterious patron who, this leads her into kind of getting involved in this scheme to overthrow a king and instate a queen instead. So apparently in this kingdom, women are usually in charge, but for some reason a dude is in charge, and she needs to help everybody set it back to where the queens are the ones who are in charge. So it sounded really appealing, sounded interesting to me, but actually in the story I just kind of felt like it was just not super great. The beginning was kind of interesting, the middle was a little bit boring, and the end got a little bit better. So overall, Rebecca Ross is a great writer. I love the way she writes. It's beautiful and feels like poetic, and the prose is just gorgeous. I love it. I love how she writes, but the story itself just felt kind of predictable and not super awesome. You know, just really predictable is kind of what the problem was, I guess. But like the actual way that she writes is beautiful. So it's hard to kind of like balance the two, you know? So anyway, not the best book I've read by Rebecca Ross, but not super terrible either. Don't know if I would really recommend it to anybody. I'm gonna have to read the second one eventually and see if maybe it's worth it then with the two together, you know, as one big story, but we'll have to see. All right, the next book I read as an audiobook was Nettle and Bone by T. Kingfisher, and this one is about a girl named Mara, and she is the youngest of 3 sisters, and the first sister gets married to this prince who apparently is an abusive guy. He's a bad guy, and she dies. So then he marries the second sister, and he continually is impregnating her to try to get an heir, right? But he's also harming her as well. So Mara realizes what's going on, and she sets off to try and, you know, fix this problem. Overall, this was totally a 5-star read for me. It was a really great story. It was kind of like a quest in the beginning. Like she's gathering up gathering up people so that they can travel to the kingdom where her sister is. Like it's kind of like a quest. I really liked the quest element of it. And then she also she kind of learns little by little the terrible things that are happening to her sisters, right? So she's just gaining all this knowledge little by little. She's on her little quest to go up there and figure out what's going on. I thought it was a really great read. I got through it super quickly. I didn't want to stop reading it. I really enjoyed that one. It was really good. Okay, so the next book, let's talk about a book that I did not like. So this is A Court, This Cruel and Lovely by Stacia Stark. I gave this guy 2 stars because I'm not a meanie face. I couldn't imagine giving somebody 1 star, but this book was not for me. It is a fantasy romance, and as we know, sometimes it can be hard to mix the two, okay? So this one here, right off the bat, I was confused about the magic system and the way that the political scene worked, okay? I had to reread the first chapter once, and I still didn't really understand what was going on, okay? So apparently you're not supposed to have your magical powers until you are 25 years old, because the gods need to use those powers for some reason, okay? So if you get caught having magical powers before you're 25, you get killed, and your family gets killed because they, were trying to hide it from the king or whoever, But like people who have their powers, like it's not like they did it on purpose. Like the gods just forgot to take their powers. So like, why are they in big trouble? It's not like something that they did, it's just something that happened to them. Anyway, so this girl Priska has powers and she's not yet 25, and so she has to flee the town that she is living in before everybody realizes that she has her powers, right? So she's going on this journey to the capital. Apparently she's gonna release the prisoners who also have been imprisoned because they have their powers. She meets a mercenary dude along the way and falls in love. I just want to read to you what I have written in my little journal here about this book, okay? This is exactly how I feel about it. Review. I just wasted 3 days of my life on this one. The main characters were boring, the male was unlikable, the female was average, the spice was average, the story was confusing, the magic system didn't make sense, the whole plot was just not great. I should have DNF'd as soon as I had to reread the first chapter to understand why they didn't have their powers until they were 25 anyway. That's all I need to know about that one. Okay, next book, Kiki, Kallira Breaks a Kingdom by Sangu Mandanna. So I really loved that Secret Society of Irregular Witches by Sangu Mandanna. So I was like, I'm gonna find more books by her. This is the only other book that my library had, and it is a middle grade, you know, YA, like younger teenage book. Okay, so I did get this 4 out of 5 stars though. So it's a fantasy, middle grade. There's this girl Kiki who has anxiety, and she also likes to draw. She is drawing pictures of like Indian mythology, like Indian mythology, and she these drawings come to life, okay? So she gets like sent into the world that she kind of created in her drawings and stuff, and she has to defeat this monster guy, and she realizes that like the kids that she created in this world, they're not just drawings, they're like, they feel like real kids, you know? So she has to save them as well. So anyway, it was a super cute story, a very quick read. There were a few little unexpected twists at the end. The middle was a little bit slow, but it was overall a quick read, so it wasn't like anything crazy or anything. And overall, I feel like it was definitely good for a younger audience. For a grown-up, maybe not super good, but I definitely think it would be good for a younger, like middle grade reader. So that was a good one. I do really like this author, and I wish my library had more books by her. All right, last book of the month was River of Shadows by Karina Halle. This was a 5-star read for me. I totally love this. It was a fantasy romance. There was spice. It had a beautiful story and a great balance of story and spice. Loved it. Like, that is what I want to see. Loved it. So Hana is the girl. Her father died, and she goes to Finland to go to his funeral, and she ends up being taken to the realm of the dead, where she's gonna like save her dad, right? She's gonna send dad back to the real world, and she trades herself to be the bride of the god of death, right? So she ends up, you know, they are gonna be a married couple, and then they end up like, you know, falling in love or whatever. So the first half of the book, like, I didn't even know that it was gonna be a spicy book at all. So the first half of the book, she's like traveling through the underworld, right? And it's all like, I guess like Scandinavian mythology and stuff, and it's really good. I really liked the whole like traveling to the underworld. It didn't feel boring. There were no parts that were like, oh, let's get through this. I really liked it. And then all of a sudden she's in the underworld, and it turns more into like a fantasy romance, and I really enjoyed that. The beginning actually was kind of intense. So when she learns of her dad's death, and you're feeling all of her emotions about how much she loved her dad and how saddened and she is by his death, like, I definitely shed a tear. It was really well written. I felt it all, you know, like it was really intense in the beginning, and then like I said, the middle was like her traveling to the underworld, and the end was like a traditional spicy romance kind of thing. So overall, I totally loved it. I feel like it flowed really well. I cannot wait to read the sequel. It's on my list for next month. But yeah, that was a good one. 5 out of 5. Totally recommend if you're into, you know, like spicy romance fantasy stuff. So yeah, let's talk about a couple of DNFs I had this month. I had 2 DNFs, books I did not finish. So I have the Patron Saint of Liars. I got about 25% into that one, and I was just kind of bored. I didn't know where the story was going. And usually if I feel like that 25% of the way in, I just told myself, you're not gonna get into it, okay? So just give up on it now. Make room for other things to read, right? And then the other book that I did not finish, and I don't even know if you would consider this like giving it a chance. So it's Spells for Forgetting, and this guy I literally only read like 30 pages in, and I did not like the writer. I did not like the way the words flowed on the page, okay? I was just not a fan, and I tried really hard. You know, I tried 30 whole pages and I just could not get into it, and so I did give up on this one. Sorry. But yeah, I'm trying to let myself be okay with not finishing books. Like after I read, what was the other one? That one that I did not like, A Court This Cruel and Lovely. And I pretty much knew after the first chapter that I was not going to be into it. It wasn't going to be any good. I should have just given up then. After I read that book, I told myself, you just need to quit when it doesn't feel right. Okay, so I did DNF 2 books this month, whereas in January, I DNF'd 1. So yeah, holy cow, this is a lot bigger video than I thought it was gonna be. If you guys did enjoy this one, give it a thumbs up. Let me know if you are reading, have read any of these. Do you disagree with my opinions on some of these? Let us know down in the comments below. Yeah, so that's it for today's video, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.